I think the pre-rehab or prehab, however you want to label that, get kind of two ways. Some people may know they've got to go into, hopefully not, but you may have, clients that are going to have surgery. So that you could look at it from we're going to get the bodies physically fit and maximally ready for that procedure prior to. The other way of prehabbing something is to think of it more like a corrective exercise where, hey, I know I've got some imbalances here. I don't have an injury yet, but if I want to prevent an injury, maybe it's a shoulder injury, or maybe I've got a little bit of degenerative change in my kneecap, for example. So people may have problems squatting or doing plyometrics. What can I do to address that? You would look at that as a rehabilitative thing. So that would be something in their program, much to what you've talked about with the mobility. This might be something I program in before I get my lifts going, but it's part of my prehab work. Obviously, you've got your rehab, which is pretty straightforward for people. I mean, whether you've got an overuse condition, a non-operative issue, or you've had surgery, then you've got to go through your rehabilitative programming. And
Do you mind if I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
What is, because I know what it is, but I'm sure a lot of people don't understand what it is. Explain the overuse criteria.
Yeah.
Overuse as well.
So this is probably a lot of what I deal with every day with a lot of my clients. Overuse is a loading problem, usually too much volume, too much intensity, or a combination of both with inadequate recovery. And so I talk to people all the time. I think one of the things that scares people about seeing a doctor or even a physical therapist, sometimes they're afraid that the first thing they're going to tell them to do is stop. I want you to work out. I want you to stop doing what you're doing. I never want to tell people to stop. I'd rather say, let's look at your training program. Let's look at these variables. And I tell them, like, it's very important that you understand the rhythm of your body. What are the loading parameters that you're asking it to handle? So how much volume, how much intensity, how much preparation leading up to those things have you put in? A lot of people just make training mistakes. But Ken, to your point, they don't want to do the hard work, the methodical preparatory training that's required of the body based on their own capacity. I mean, so you have things like training history, their age, previous medical problems, natural genetic predispositions to things that they don't even know they have. A lot of these things go into whether a person fails or succeeds in a training plan. And that's why no two people were ever alike. And so basically the overuse happens. Like, you could give them the best training program in the world, but if they don't follow it, if they decide to skip a few steps or add too much load too soon, the body breaks down. And so that's, in a nutshell, that's what an overuse injury would be.
Yeah, I noticed that seems to be very common in jiu-jitsu, because the jiu-jitsu format is everything's in flexion. Your fingers are flexed, your shoulders are flexed, your spine is flexed. Everything is in a flexed position. And it's like they don't do enough counteracting. Like, you're getting better at jiu-jitsu, but you're becoming worse as a human. I've seen some of like the older school black belts where they're able to grab onto you and they're like cement, but then they have difficulties like grabbing their keys, or it's like, yeah, they're able to smash you, but then they can't get up off the like a chair. And it's because, yeah, you've gotten really phenomenal at jiu-jitsu, which is great, and then kudos to them for training all their life doing jiu-jitsu. But it's like, man, you can barely walk, my man. Like, there's things that you got to do to kind of, and I don't know if that, I'm assuming that that's the overuse. That's what I'm thinking. A lot of the pain profiles they get is basically just overuse from doing the sport of jiu-jitsu.
I trained an Olympic level fencer, over 10 years ago. And fencing's a very interesting sport. I would say most of us probably don't watch it, but you're always kind of leaping forward on one leg and pushing off the back leg. So you tend to see this very large quadricep on the front because of all the deceleration, right? But then on the backside, you've got this massive calf muscle. So when you would look at this gal, it was really incredible just to take a picture of her lower extremity and see kind of like it was just kind of imbalanced, and you're like, wow, you just realize.
Big thigh at the front and then a huge
Yeah,
calf.
totally. And so it's crazy because, you have this Olympic level person, but you just realize how the body will adapt to that stress. It's pretty incredible. Just to kind of finish up our thought. So the post rehab, because we were talking about prehab, rehab, post rehab. So that's that transitional phase coming off of your rehab program. And again, I think that's where guys like yourself and where I tried to plug in, in the early 2000s, is I think a lot of people got stuck. They would get basic range of motion, basic strength back, but they weren't really getting that bridge to get them back to that prior level of high fitness activity or sport specific capacity, And so that post rehab is where I think a lot of people, I always try to find good fitness people I can trust or get clients connected. Because I've done both. I've lived in the rehab world and the performance world. I feel like I still live in both, but probably more rehab focused at the moment. But having an understanding of those loading principles we talked about that get people in trouble, and then how do you safely kind of periodize your training and get your clients back, if it's back on the mat, whatever activity they're doing, that's a critical piece. And that's where I think clients, they need help, because unfortunately, in my experience, the absence of pain is a green light for people. If they don't have pain, then they're like, I'm good to go, man. Put me back in. I can train full go. I can run, or whatever it is that they want to do. And so then what happens is they ramp up too quickly and they end up back in that overuse pattern again, because they just ignore those training principles of kind of gradually raising that threshold to activity tolerance.